Andrew, dude, look at that set. Your set is looking awesome, man.
Oh yeah, I got the lights. Everything's looking good.
It's looking crisp. I love the blue light and the red light. People don't know what it takes to make that intentional of a look, but it is. It looks amazing, dude.
Well, you're looking good too, man. You're looking
Thank you.
good.
Well, we got a good episode for you guys today. I am super, super excited. Today's guest comes all the way from Hawaii. He is an author. He's a speaker. He is a father of five. We ask this question to almost everybody that we have on the show. What is the biggest win for coming on the Alpha Dad show? And I love this answer. I wanted to specifically read this first because this is kind of the table that is set before us today. So we said, what is the biggest win? And usually I'm talking about like, do you have a book? Do you have a course? Do you have like what's your thing that you're on here for? And he said the biggest bullseye win for him would be if more dads believe they matter and desire to step up into their true identity. And I just think that could not be a better intro for our guest today, Mr. Ned Schaut. Welcome, dude.
Yes. Welcome on the
Thank
show,
you
sir.
so much. Fun to hang out with you guys. Thanks for having me on.
Dude, pumped to have you on. What a great start to this show here. Tell us, what is break that down a little bit. It seems like that's something you've said before. What does that mean to you, that statement there? More dads believe they matter and desire to step up into their true identity.
Yeah, I mean, it just gets more and more confirmed for me that when you look around the world, the problems, the desire to make an impact, fathers have an opportunity to lead and love in their home. And I think one of the examples I like to use is like, my kids might marry your kids. Now, I don't know how old your kids are right now, but it matters not just how I lean into my family and show up and serve them and disciple them and guide them and what it means to be kingdom-minded family. But if there's not other men who are stepping into that, then who are my kids going to marry? Who are they going to build families with? Right? If we want to make long lasting change, it's going to be through families. I read this just the other day in this article, and I just so loved it. It was talking about marriage, but it said in our current culture, marriage no longer needs to be defended. It needs to be lived and taught. And I think the same is true for fatherhood, right? We don't need to stand here and defend what family means. We know that family is the start to kingdom-minded people. Like that's where you learn how to live in community with people, is in your home. And it starts with a father leading, not patriarchal, everybody kind of serve me, take my shoes off, rub my back when I get home from work. But how, when I walk in through that door, am I loving and serving my 5-year-old daughter, my 15-year-old daughter, my 18-year-old son, my wife? I mean, I'm just making up ages, but that's what it means, man. I could go on and on. I'm passionate about this.
Dude, that's awesome. You got a good looking crew too, man.
Yeah, bro.
Look at that. Look at that family. That's great.
That's
How many? You have 5 kids here. That's incredible. Love it. So,
yep. 5 kids, 11 to 18.
Wow.
11 to 18. That's awesome. So, I mean, you've been on a lot of different stages. You've been on the TED Talk stage. You're all over Instagram. You've got a book. You've got, you're all over the place here. And I was reading through a lot of the comments, and while I was listening to your video as well, I was kind of seeing what everyone else was saying. And so many people were hearing it. And it's interesting to hear, especially like I really enjoyed reading the comments on the TED Talks video, because it's not in the sphere that you're normally in. It's kind of a different crowd, a different audience. It's not just like the dad or the Christian, like anything like that, like circle. It's a new circle. And it was really interesting to read through some of those comments. And they were all saying, man, if everybody just listened to this guy, the world would be perfect. Like people were saying that. And I know maybe the world's not going to be perfect, but the world would be a much better place, like an infinitely better place if people did listen to you and took some of your advice and some of your methods and things that you're teaching here and implemented it into their own lives as fathers. And I'm curious, kind of like if you had like a perfect world where dads were being true fathers and true dads to their children and to their spouses and everything, kind of what would that look like? What would that world look like if you had somehow the ability to make that perfect world like these people are talking about in the comments they're maybe even hearing this stuff for the first time in their lives and kind of discovering this? What would that world look like to you? What would fathers look like?
Yeah, it's a great question. So if you're asking me specifically what a father would look like, I think that as men, we would stop leaning so much on provider. So I think a lot of our identity has come along the providing side. And I actually kind of had a realization recently that I feel like in some sense, we put so much value on that it almost replaces my need for God. Okay. So in a sense, I'm providing for my family. I'm the end all be all. Whereas if we really shift our perspective and think I'm a steward, like whatever job I have, whatever career I have, that doesn't define me. It's an opportunity God gave me to feed my family, take care of my family, serve my family. But again, the emphasis of my identity wouldn't be primarily on what I do or how much I make, right? It would be more of, okay, that is a component of my purpose on this planet, but just as much to love my wife, to love my kids. So I feel as though a father would see his family as a gift from God to steward well. And he would no longer be the provider. He would be the steward of that. And if each one of us did that and showed up day after day after day after day after day, realize that there's no destination. It's just constant becoming, constant dying, constant serving, that would just be perpetuated for generations. Right. And we would see less divorce. We would see less of all the issues we find from men not showing up for their families.
Man. That's so good.
Dude,
so
that's
good.
so
I think
good.
we do as people get so focused on one thing. And then as a men, we kind of sometimes we kind of pick one. It might be finance. It might be fitness, where we just go all in on one thing. And Colton and I have a shared mentor, and he talks about the F7 goals. He talks about faith, family, finances, fitness, friendships, fun, and focus. And it's so true. You have to have all 7 of those, or in my opinion, you won't have a full life. Because if you just focus on fitness, or maybe you just focus on fitness and finance, then you leave out your family, then you leave out your faith, then you leave out then it's the question's like, what is life at that point when you don't have every aspect of life going in there? So I think that's great. I think you're totally right. We as fathers and as men, we get so focused on hunting and killing and dragging it back home. And I did this. Look at my bank account. Look at my the success I've had in the gym. Look at this. But it's so true that you have to have every kind of aspect of life there in equal balance. I really do.
And I think there's a shift happening in our culture. Like they say you can evaluate a culture by who its heroes are. And I think as a culture, there's been this massive shift for a little bit on, like there was a kind of a beta male through the 90s, early 2000s vibe of very soft men were kind of put as heroes. And then it swung back the other direction. And now we have Andrew Tates and these guys. And, I think they served a valuable purpose in our culture. But I think there's a hunger now for men that can pull all this together. That's like, hey, fitness is great. Like Andrew said, you killed the deer, you brought it home. Like, that's great. But there's something about being able to balance these things in place as a dad that I think is really, there's a hunger in our culture amongst men that we're like, this is what we're looking for right now.
Yeah, I think the reason too, I think fitness is critical, obviously, and I think finances is critical. I think the reason why men lean heavily on those is because I can control that a bit more. If I, seeing the result of my son and his success could be 15, 20, 25 years down the road, seeing my marriage, be at a 50th wedding anniversary. I mean, bro, I've been married. I just celebrated 20 years. That's some work.
Yeah.
That's like daily grind. Whereas I could go to the gym for 3 weeks, 90 days, whatever. And I could see results. I could go to the office where people don't give me pushback and I could see results kind of quick. And we're in a culture that wants that fast pace. So those things are important. But I think, again, they have to be looked at as stewarding, right? Like, guys give up on their fitness path if it's to get a 6-pack. But if they understand that their body's a temple of God and that my soul can only flourish to the extent that I have my body put it in a position to be able to love better, then it's all of a sudden it's a different conversation I'm having around fitness. Or same with finances. If I'm stewarding that well, it's so that I can be a gift to the world, not so that I could feel awesome about myself.
That's so good. It's working under the Lord is what it's doing. Because otherwise if you're working under human masters, whether it's yourself, your own mindset of like, what am I doing this for? Or whether it's working under the Lord, you're totally right. Because that's an infinite, like that's an eternal goal. That's it's unto the Lord. It's never ending. It's great. I love it.
You mentioned it in your TED Talk, and we'll link that down below because I think it was a great TED Talk. And like Andrew said, a lot of the comments were like, if everybody watched this, our world would be different. And I think that's a great bullseye to hit there. But in the TED Talk, you talk about when your daughter was born back in 2006. You're like, man, you were young, you're 22 years old, you had the backwards hat going on. I don't think the backwards hat part hasn't changed, but maybe a more glorious beard. Your beards come in quite nicely.
No, I don't know. I don't know. He might have been born with that beard. It's just like from birth, just a glorious beard.
I wish, but no.
But you talk about, the nurses probably wouldn't have bet on you. The people that were around you might not have bet on you in that season there. Obviously now you're like writing the book on this. We'll get to your book in just a second. You're right. You got courses on this. We'll get to those courses, but you're like the role model of a great dad. You got kids that love you. You got teenage kids that want to hang out with you. It looks like your daughter's a successful track star and she's like wanting to train with you, and your son's wanting to lift at the weight, gym with you. Like, it seems like you're hitting the bullseye as a dad. If you could go back and talk to that 22-year-old backwards hat, people wouldn't bet on him, and give him like a mantra or like a paradigm, like something he could just like repeat over and over and over again to make that bridge between where he was then and where you are now easier, what would that mantra, what would that phrase, what would that thing be that you could just like, if you could pass it on, like here's something to like look through. Here's, as you come up against situations, you're like, man, this happened. Do I backhand my son, or do I encourage him? Like what do I do in this situation? What would be the kind of a mantra to hold on to?
I think it just comes down to identity, right? So it comes down to identity. I think at a certain point, I started to kind of, even today, have this mantra or mental picture for myself of imagining myself as like an 85-year-old man looking in the mirror, wanting to respect the man that I see. Mm-hmm. And when you put yourself in that position, you're not going to be thinking about your job. You're not going to be thinking about how many employees you had or your teams or whatever. You're going to be thinking about your family, or, put yourself in that, that perfect scenario of I'm going to die in my bed and everyone's standing around me. What do I want that to look like? What is that picture? And so I think if I'm going to go back to that 22-year-old, it's to get over the defining yourself by performance, get over like, oh, you made the most sales this week, or so it would be moving out of that quicker and realizing that family is why you're here. And I'll tell you, I think a lot of my problem, if you will, was growing up in the church, feeling as though God had a purpose for me, like a certain calling that I was maybe going to miss. So I kept looking for this, like, is it a youth pastor? I'm going to start a youth center, all these kind of things. And I finally realized, like, my kids are my youth group, and every dad should just see it that way. And if every dad saw it that way, we wouldn't even need a youth group necessarily, for at least the reasons we want it today. Yeah. Right. It could just be a time of celebration and getting together. So that's what I would hope for that 22-year-old, is that he gets over himself a little sooner. I'm 41 and I feel like I'm still in the process of getting over myself.
That's good.
That's so good. That's great. I love it. I think that's powerful. Like, your kids are your youth group. Like, that's who you should be. Like, that's who you should be mentoring. It's who you should be investing into, is your children. Like, that's who you should be discipling and everything. It's great. I love it. I'm curious, a lot of the fatherhood content out there is a lot less popular than if you go to look at other content, whether it's for instance, for moms. So, and someone, again, in that comment section, I love diving in there. Someone had mentioned that in like, for motherhood content for moms and all that, like, it's in the views on those videos and that content is in the millions and millions. And millions. But it just doesn't even exist for the fathers. Like, why 50% of parents are fathers? Like, it's half of us here, so why do you think that is? Why is there so little? Maybe, is it attention? Is there less attention being put in that kind of category, or is it less people are looking and searching for that? Why do you think as dads, maybe we think maybe we should just figure it out on our own and we shouldn't go looking for that advice and that help? Like, what do you think that is? Why do you think that is like that?
Yeah, man, that's like the big question that we're all asking. And I'll always remember, I went to this creative workshop about 7 years ago, and I started having these ideas about wanting to impact fatherhood. And the guy, one of my favorite speakers, such a good communicator, I raised my hand and I asked, like, hey, I want to influence fathers. What, here's my ideas. What do you think? And he just was like, yeah, that's going to be tough. He's like, you're going to have to try a lot of mediums to reach those guys. And I think the reason is they're just couple things. One, I think they're tired. So when they hop on Instagram or Facebook or whatever, they're wanting to blow 5 minutes, right? They got a lot on their mind. The dishwasher's broken, the lawn needs mowed, there's stuff at the work, they're trying to make their marriage work, their kid, this, that, or the other. So they're tired, right? So when they hop on Instagram and they see me or you like, hey, let's be great dads, I think they're like, move on. Like, and not because what we have to say isn't worthwhile, but they're tired. The other thing, I think mothers, there's a very clear, there's a rite of passage for them, right? They give birth to a human being. Yeah. Like, bro, that's wild. Yeah. That's wild. There's no rite of passage for you and I. There's
Yeah.
no like distinctual, like today, it's like, sure, you're a man and you're not a dad. And then now you're a dad, but that's about it. And that's really why I wrote this kids book, which I know, not to plug it, but to bring it up. The reason why I wrote the kids book is I felt like if I wrote a book with me like, hey, 12 steps to be a great dad, I feel like nobody would ever want to look at it. It would just be like, not interesting. And you wouldn't want to buy it for somebody either. But this is a gift to give a new dad. And he doesn't even know it, but it's showing him who he is. It has 10 affirmations in the book, and it's basically a book you can read to your son. I have the father of daughter one coming out, but it's, I will show you how to blank, blank, blank. And so that's why I put it out there, is I felt like men needed a rite of passage to be invited in. And last thought, and you cut me off here, is I also think like the reason why you and I have these podcasts is like, in a certain sense, we want to feel like men and dads, right? Like maybe we didn't have a rite of passage growing up. So you and I might be struggling with our identity to some extent, while we're also trying to raise our kids and show them their identity. So I think that a lot of men have not been invited into being a man.
Yeah.
And so I think that they don't know what to do other than, I was told to go to work, so that's what I'm going to do. And I'm a good provider if I do that, without realizing like I could provide security and safety and harmony and peace in my home, not just provide a paycheck.
I love that. It almost gives men like a checklist too, like a, like, hey, like you're saying, like women have the rite of passage, like, hey, you've made it now, but like having markers as a man. I was told in the Spartan culture, the women raised the kids until they were 7 years old, and then they were taken out, and then they were like raised by the men, and it was like this, like, because they were raised in a warrior culture. There's a Japanese saying, it's recently been made famous by Jordan Peterson. It's better to be a warrior in a garden than a gardener in a war. And when I look at your content, you definitely manage that tension well. It seems like you're with your kids, and you live in the Garden State there. It's not the Garden State, that's Jersey, but you live in like this beautiful paradise island world there in Hawaii. And it seems like you manage that tension well. You work out, you lift, you're a warrior in that sense. You can take care of your kids. And the gardener side here, you got this soft, you're raising 4 girls. You can't just always be a warrior when you're raising 4 girls. How do you manage that tension in your world of being, the savage dad that can take care of his family, but also the kind of guy that can have a heart to heart with his daughter?
Yeah. So let me just share this with you, because you kind of alluded to it twice, like that I'm a role model, and how do I do that? And I'll tell you, so I have my journal right here from this morning. And what I would say is, I'm in the fight, right? Like, I'm in the game. I do not have this figured out. I'm in the game of this. I just took my daughter to college last week. My first kid going to college. I don't know how to do that. I've never done that before. So having those conversations, we did a rite of passage for her at the house. We wrote something, we read it to her in front of the family. We're like trying to make these moments. And again, it's not about doing it perfectly. It's about doing it. Right. So the reason why I bring this up this morning, I'm like, I'm journaling to God, and I'm like, yo, God, I need to make some shifts right now. I want to lead my family out of love, not control. Right. Because school's starting, and we're doing, we're implementing, we did a Bible devotion this morning, and I'm trying to find that balance of leading out of love and not leading out of fear, and not leading out of control. So what I would say to dudes is like, be where you are and commune with God, and then go lead your family, and then come back to him, and then go lead your family, and then come back to him. Like, bro, that's the wrestle. And that should be our entire life. Right. I mean, when my kids get married, when my kids move out, when I have grandkids, like, dude, that's a big opportunity you and I have. But there's no book. There is no thing. I mean, go all the resources, use them, find them, for sure. But also just be in the fight. Right. Like, be in the game, and don't make it about you. So
love that.
That's good. Who's your mentor? Because you've got like an unbelievable amount of wisdom on the subject and everything. I'm curious, do you schedule maybe your days or your weeks? Do you go meet with other men and kind of feed off of them and learn from them, or are you getting us some books? Are you getting this, like you said, from being in the fight yourself, or where's it kind of? It's great information. I know other guys are asking, like, how do I get some of this in my life, like in my practical schedule? How do I find other guys like this in my world?
Yeah, so I'd say there's so many good groups out there that I've been a part of, and mentors and books. I mean, I gained so much from Front Row Dads, from Rise Up Kings, from Superhuman Fathers. I mean, and then I know I haven't done anything with Dad Edge and all these there's all these groups out there with like, just find like-minded men to go do those things. And then I would say journaling, reflecting on your days, your weeks, your months, your years. And then, yes, I do have a spiritual mentor. I meet with this dude every other week. Here's the deal. Like if you don't have a mentor that you are accountable to and you're top dog in your house or your business or whatever, like you are setting yourself up for failure. So you got to have men who you can be vulnerable with and share everything with and not allow any darkness as much as possible to be inside of you. You got to get that out of you.
So good.
Yeah, some thoughts there.
I like
love it. It's so good to have like a weekly time to sit down with somebody and like you said, be accountable to. Because if you are it and there's nobody else you're talking with and nobody else you're accountable to, like, I mean, there's so many ways that can go wrong. It's so good. I think it's so good to have a solid mentor. It's awesome.
One of the biggest currencies I've found with kids is attention. Like my daughter's always like, "Hey, dad, can you come?" You know, it's like dad. Like I get home, it's just dad. And so that attention is super important. I now have 3 kids. So I have a 4-year-old who's born in 2020. I got a 2-year-old born in 2021. And now I have a newborn born in February. So he's 6 months old.
Dude, congrats, bro.
Thank you.
That's
1 girl,
epic.
2 boys.
There you go.
And I noticed already with the 3rd one coming along, like with the 2, we were able to play, you know, man to man. Like my wife grabs one, I grab the other. It was great. You know, we got this 3rd one. Now we're playing zone defense. Like it's a different game. I'm like, okay, you know, we rely on our oldest daughter to really take care of herself more. And you can't help but create that birth order stuff. You know, they talk about there's never been a president that wasn't a firstborn or an only child. There's never been a comedian that's not a youngest. Like you get a lot of these, you know, these birth order things. But how do you, as a dad, schedule time? Like you have 5 kids. That to me seems overwhelming. And I actually have a goal of having 5 as well. That's one of my dreams is to have 5 as well. How do you manage the attention currency, and how do you spend that currency wisely of your attention? Because you can only get split so many ways. How do you manage that time with them on the individual level?
Yeah. So, I mean, when they were littler, it was a little bit easier. Just because they're home, there was more family meals, there was more like bedtime routine, there was a lot more just rhythm in our lives where we went to church on Sunday and kids were home and they weren't everywhere all the time. As my kids got older, right, they have their lives and sports and so much going on. So it might sound crazy, but I actually have a dashboard that I made in Google, like Google Sheets. Back when I was in sales. Okay. So back when I was in sales 10 years ago, I'd be like, all right, I made 5,000 calls this year. I talked to 1,000 people. I made 100 sales. I made X money. Yeah. Right. So at a certain point, I was like, wait a second, that's just a component of my life. So many other components. So I actually track all my time now. So like, I'll give you an example. Well, okay. Each of my kids is in there. So I could look back over the month and be like, I spent 4 intentional hours with Brody and 1 with Violet. All right.
That's
so I want to make sure to set up a date or do something with her to make sure that I'm spending time with her. I'll tell you, I'm so crazy about my kids. Like I spend so much time with them. The way that actually helped me the most was with my wife. I realized like, dude, I need to spend more time with my wife. Like everybody, if you ask me, am I a good husband? I'm like, hell yeah, I'm a good husband. Cause I'm comparing myself to the jackhole next door, right. Who doesn't do anything. Right. But if I looked at my own time, I'm like, dang, I spent that much time in the gym and then that much time dating my wife. So I actually realized that my 39th year and then my 40th year of life, I was like, I'm going to double my time. So I almost did. I went from 5% of my time to 9.8 something percent of my time. With my wife, which I love that you do this, dude.
This is awesome.
It's so cool. I love that.
It sounds a little much, but the thing is if it actually matters to you, it's right. Like, you know how much money you have in the bank.
You measure what you treasure. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So anyways, it's a little excessive, but I would say that's how I make sure to spend time with all my kids.
So where do we get this dashboard? Is this something that you
is there a downloadable?
Do you give it? Do you sell it? Like where do we get this thing? I'm looking through your shop right now.
No, it's funny. So I actually just use it as like a lead magnet for Rise Up Kings Fitness. So there's like a video of me going through the whole thing. So I'll just send it to you guys. You can go check it out.
Yeah. Okay.
So good.
Well, we'll make sure we
Yeah.
put it in the links below and make sure we give that away to people. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's gold. The thing is like you look
Time
at some of the
management.
most successful people. I know too, like if you go listen, another way that I shifted it big time was Rob Dyrdek, the skateboarder.
Yeah.
He was on Impact Theory podcast. I remember sitting on an assault bike like 5 years ago, listening to, there it is. You got it. Dang, you're good, bro.
Welcome on the key.
Him talking about his dashboard. So you could go Google Rob Dyrdek. And so I've kind of created some similarities to what he does as far as like a whole life evaluation.
Andrew and I have actually broken down his financial spreadsheet. Andrew's doing well for himself. He's a young guy in his 20s, got kids, but he's got like a really nice house. When we first did the spreadsheet thing, he had this Ferrari. He's got like all the cool stuff and like makes great money, but he's like very intentional about his spreadsheet, his money, where every dollar goes, and got this and that and all this stuff. So it's not something a lot of dads drop the ball in teaching the tactics of what it means to be a dad and what it means to be a man and an adult. And I think finances is one that usually gets dropped. My parents have an amazing marriage. They've been married for 31 years. They got the kind of marriage that like they giggle at each other and it's like very real. And you're like, man, you guys are awesome. They're in their 50s. And I'm like, that's like a total goal is to have that kind of marriage, and to I've been very intentional about learning from them, but I see a lot of dads drop those balls. So to have a dashboard where you're keeping track of these things, like my dad says he's never missed a date night in 31 years. Like no matter what's going on in the schedule, they got that date night every week, like money. They did my entire childhood. They were money about it. I can remember
That's
like
epic.
maybe 5 dinners we didn't have as a family growing up. I mean, we were in sports and this and that. We were a very active family, and my dad's still like, we were going to have dinner. It might be at 9:00 at night, but we were going to sit down as a family. Like, he made these things happen. And so like that dashboard or something tangible, the tactics of doing that, I think that's amazing. So we'll definitely make sure people get this. I'll put the link to your rukfitness.com/time management in the links below. I'm excited to go through this.
Yeah, dude, that's gold. Like I've been working on that for 10 years. That thing's money if somebody uses it.
So you got this book here, The Adventure of Fatherhood. Let me put that on the screen here. You guys can get it on Amazon. I actually got it coming. It'll be here tomorrow. I was so disappointed it wasn't here for the show. I was wanting to have it right back here and hold it up and stuff. I just missed the cutoff on it. But tell us about this Adventure of Fatherhood. Why did you write this book? What was the inspiration behind it?
Yeah, so originally I had this idea, and I still have this idea. We'll see if it comes to fruition. But to be able to order a dad a gift when he becomes a dad. Right. So like a box that shows up with a t-shirt or a hat, like I'm putting these hats in there now. These like there you go. It's right up there on the site. So as like a dude, welcome, as a rite of passage, like, dude, welcome. Hey, I see you. You were made for this. You have what it takes. That's it. Like, dude, if you put your hand on my shoulder and you tell me, Ned, you have what it takes. Like, that's all I need, dude. That's like the dad handing a 10-year-old a BB gun being like, you're not ready for this, but you are ready for this. Same thing, right?
The Red Rider.
We need that as men. Yes, baby. So we need that. But I was like struggling with what the centerpiece could be on this, right? I had made this journal on Kickstarter and it was cool. People liked it, but like not that many dads are going to journal. I wrote a book, which like not that many dads are going to read a book. And I was like, what if it was a tabletop book with like stories from dads? And I'm like, nobody's going to care. Like nobody's going to care. And so
I
then
love the
I was
brutal
like,
honesty with yourself.
It's great.
Well, yeah, it's like, I want to make something beautiful, but it's got to matter.
Yeah.
Right. It's got to matter. And so I felt like any dad could be like, here's this book and a cigar or a bottle of whiskey or whatever you want to give with it. But instead of here's the cigar and like, oh man, you're not going to be able to have sex for 6 weeks or your life is over, like whatever BS like we say. If I just handed this book and said, dude, I'm super pumped for you. You're going to be a great dad. You have what it takes, man. Like I see you. Yeah, like see, like just those words, if you feel something that matters. And so then the dad's going to look at it and hopefully he flips through it and then hopefully it becomes this centerpiece that he's excited to read to his son. And I get pictures from people like 3-4-year-old boy who's like, dude, I love dad reading this book to me. And then I have the father-daughter one coming out as well. I've just been wanting to be really strategic about it landing. And so working on it's done. It's been done for a year. Yeah. It's just finding the right way to make it land just because I want it to have impact on people's lives.
Well, and it's kind of challenging. Like as a man, like the picture here is like, a dad taking his son camping up in the mountains and you got all this stuff. And you hear the stories of girls that grow up and they're women. I think there's never anything wrong that you could do with your girls. I think like no matter what time you're spending with your kids, if you're spending time with them, like you said, you're showing up in the fight. I think that's huge. Like if you're taking them to the basketball court because that's what you do already, I think that's great. But as a dad who's raised, one daughter to where now she's sent off into the world, and you know, you got these daughters that are, you know, in teenagers here. How do you involve them in your world, or how do you get involved in their world? How do you create those connection points, that time with them as they're getting older? Because as a guy, like my sons, I got 2 sons now, and I'm like, I already got him Nerf guns. Like one thing can barely hold his head up, and I'm like, I got you a Nerf gun, dude. And I'm gonna start shooting. Bam, bam, bam. You know, like I can't help it. It's so easy. But for my daughter, I'm like, I'm intentional about the things I do with her. Obviously, we include her in the Nerf wars, but I want to also, like, you know, get into her level and things that she would be interested in as well.
So are you asking me how to connect with your daughter?
Yeah, you mentioned like the challenge of you're in this book for the girls as well, and you want that to land well. How do you have 4 daughters? So how do you manage that tension?
Yeah, so I would tell you, I like the girl one better. I think that the father-daughter one's so epic. You know, kids are interesting, right? You do have this feminine and masculine, which I'll give you a great example. Okay, I got twins, boy and a girl. When they were what, 6, maybe 6 months old, a little early. Say 1 years old, I'd be on the couch with them, and I would shove my son over, and he would die laughing. I would shove my daughter over, and she would start to cry. There was this tenderness. However, now obviously I didn't just keep doing that. I didn't keep doing that. I was tender with her. However, they each have their things. Now she will kill me at CrossFit, and she's 15 now, and I have yet to tap her in jiu-jitsu.
Wow.
I mean, and I'm telling you, bro, I try. And she's a savage gangster, but she's also that tender little girl still. So I would say, one is involve your kids in the things that you like to do, but to not push it, right? Like, oh, we play football as a family. Do what you like to do with your kids. Yeah. I wouldn't go so far as that, but then also find the things that they like to do and then do that with them. So I think that the whole idea of, like, I mean, your daughter might kick your butt at jiu-jitsu one day. Mine does, you know, or but she also wants to paint her nails and go on a date, and, you know, she wants to smell nice. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, she's still a girl. So I just think it's less about what we do with our kids, and it's more about just being with our kids. You know, like, I think one of the things that I really want to be known as a human being. I want to be known and then loved for who I am. Like, know your kids and then let them know you as well.
Dude, that's awesome. So good.
Yeah, but it just starts with time. You know, like, it doesn't matter if you're playing checkers or you're playing pick up worms. It doesn't matter. Just as long as you're doing it together.
Get that time in.
That's it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Yeah, no, I think it's so true. And I think Colton, on one episode, he was talking about something his dad taught him, which was, you know, never leave the house empty, like with an empty car. Like, always just grab one of them and get out. And ever since he said that, I was like, man, I'm going to go to the grocery store, and I'll just, like, leave to go to get groceries, like, real fast, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever. And I'll like there's been times where I literally get in my car and I'm like pulling back into the garage. I'm like, I got to go grab one of the kids. Like, I got to go grab one. Just because it doesn't matter what you're doing. It's just, as long as you're, like, spending time with them is what they long for, and is what will make the biggest impact on their life. I think it's so good.
Dude, I'm fired up about this gift box here, man. This is super cool. So people can get this. It's the Adventure of Fatherhood gift box. If you guys know a dad that's, you know, a new dad, or somebody's about to become a dad, I think those words you said were awesome. Like, hey, you got this. You know, give them the box. You got this thing. You know, you're going to be a great dad. You got this. It's kind of the rite of passage. You know, I think that's a good move here. But you also have courses. I think if people could just get into your verse here, into your world, and the tornado that is Ned Schaut, and just gather some of the intel you got going on, I think their lives are gonna be better for it. What are these courses? What do you got here? You got Introduction to Fatherhood. And again, Andrew and I've talked about this before. When you get your driver's license, like, you have to go take a course, you do all this stuff, and then, like, you have to pass the test. Like, there's a thing with it. Now you got a license. Now you got this. Right. You also become a dad, and you just walk out with this baby, like this picture here on the screen. You just got this baby. You're like, how did I walk out of the hospital?
Is this legal? Like, what?
Yeah, I know. So wild. Yeah, you know what? So with the courses, you know, you've got the Introduction to Fatherhood, which is you're a brand new dad. And then you've got the Discover Fatherhood, which is I've got a 15-year-old and I don't know what the hell I'm doing. They're both pretty much the same, just the language is different. Again, these are not parenting courses. So none of this is parenting. This is all, like, identity and who you are. That's what it is that we need. And then the 18-year roadmap is, like, once you go through those other two, if you want to roll with me for 90 days with a cohort of dudes, we just go through a weekly Zoom. It's like a year's worth of material in 90 days of just like full board implementing things in your home, like understanding who you are. And then I got some other stuff that's going to be coming eventually.
I love it, dude. This is awesome. So Adventure of Fatherhood.com. Guys, check this out. And again, we'll put that link to his dashboard in there. I think that should be a definite homework assignment. Everybody go through that dashboard. I think you manage what you treasure. You know, I think that's an important piece there. And measure what you treasure and get your dashboard set up. Like, start figuring these things out. Like measure your finances, but also measure your time with your kids. Be intentional about that. Measure your time with your spouse. Make sure you're intentional with that and get that raised up. Ned, any closing words for us? We got a lot of men here watching this, this show here. Shout out to them. You know, we started the show with your line here. I think this is a great line. I'll read it one more time here. More dads believe they matter and desire to step into their true identity. So you're talking to guys out there. What's your closing thoughts to them?
Yeah, I think my closing thoughts are just that we need you. Like, we just need you so bad. Your wife needs you. If you're married, your kids need you. The world is in desperate need of you. You are just at the forefront, right? Like, look at this as a long game, that your biggest impact might be when you're 75, 85, even 95 years old. So take care of yourself, position yourself so that you can be a father, not while your kids are just in your house till they're 18, but well beyond that, and grandkids and maybe even great grandkids. But every day that you choose to lean into being the father God designed you to be, you are making global legacy impact.
Hello, I'm Mike Lindell, and I'm excited to bring you my Giza Dream bed sheets for the best offer ever. We're all experiencing unprecedented rising prices, but I was able to secure a limited amount of Giza cotton for a great price, and I'm going to pass those savings directly on to you. Get my Giza Dream bed sheets for as low as $29.98 with your promo code. They're the most luxurious sheets ever, made with the world's finest cotton, grown only in a region between the Sahara Desert, Mediterranean Sea, and the Nile River, where the weather conditions are perfect for growing cotton. My sheets are ultra soft and breathable, but extremely durable. I guarantee they'll be the most comfortable sheets you'll ever own. So go to mypillow.com or call the number on your screen. Use your promo code to save 50% on my Giza Dream bed sheets. That's as low as $29.98. Quantities are extremely limited at these amazing prices, so please order now.